we're here to review Badfinger's single Day After Day. In the US, it came out at the end November 71. In the UK, it came out January 72. So you actually got it a month or two earlier than the rest of the world. And it's off the Straight Up album, which was Badfinger's, I guess, second album with Joey Mullen, third album with the name Badfinger, and probably their most successful commercially, still the album that gets them, and this single gets them the most credit in the world today. We're going to talk about both the US single, which had Money on the B-side, and we're going to talk about the single, which I have the Japanese version with a cool little cover picture there. But in the rest of the world, including I think the UK and most of Europe, Sweet Tuesday Morning was the B-side. So let's kick it off. This is the song that got you into Badfinger. So I'm going to let
Day After Day is the song that I was never the same after I heard. That's history, but I was in a 68 Chevy that I drove. It came off the radio and I was stunned. I thought that this can't be the Beatles. Is that McCartney singing? No. Is that George playing the slide? Which in fact he, I guess, did duet with Pete Ham on it. But the point is it was massive. It was original. It was melodic. It was the George sound, but it was almost like the McCartney melodicism they combined with a little of the George. And there's so much more in there, but that's how it first hit the ear. You couldn't miss this, obviously, the slide. And from a distance of these years, of course, it's superb. It's along with we'll get to Baby Blue, but Day After Day has to be looked at as a type of a zenith. As you said, it was a commercial peak, without a doubt, of Badfinger, and enough where a 19-year-old kid in Chicago could be struck totally down by it and just stunned. And it was that big. It was on the radio all the time. And I did get struck by this time listening to it, the superb drumming, which I think really Mike Gibbons did a beautiful job. And I'm kind of starting backwards. The harmonies are obviously beautiful. It's a great recording. The recording is stunning. I mean, to this day, it's a work of art to me. But it's an example of Pete Ham's genius to me in songwriting and his beautiful playing and vocal. And you left a little speechless. And this was what I fell in love with them based on this.
Yeah, and I think in the US it was number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100, and in the UK number 10. So it actually did worse than No Matter What, which is kind of interesting. It's just an entire atmosphere that's created in whatever the 3 minutes of that song. I think I remember you explaining it once when I was a kid about where did this one come from, because we have so many demos and stuff that have come out since that time, and you can almost understand the human that was behind it and how they piece this song. I don't think there's any demo of it but the arrangement, like you said, is so core to the whole thing. It's very drum and bass heavy.
Yes.
It's basically that is the whole glue of the song. And then there's a lot of the slide guitar and the treble, and there's this emptiness kind of in between those two. And he fills it out with the vocal lines here and there, but there's not a lot of mid in the song, which I think is why it feels so heavy.
To me, that takes such a great amount of confidence, and to know it's such a powerful song that there's a beautiful interlacing slide and there's a drum you can break it down, but in the end it's got those pauses with just strumming the chord. He found a beautiful melody which hit that flat or whatever it was. I didn't know musically what it was, but I'll never forget hearing that because I had never heard that. I remember comparing it to the Beatles song Rain, where it goes da 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 da, but this was da 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 da.
Every day my mind is all around you.
And it just sounds so off almost, but beautifully original. And
hard not to think about what George was going through his head, right, when he heard the song and then when he was playing on the song and that whole history. Sometimes, I mean, we've read, right, he played the exact same thing as Pete.
Right.
Late, and some of the other ones, there's harmonies, so hard to know if they're playing different parts or if some of those were double tracked. There's not really clear studio notes for any of that. But when that solo happens in the middle, it almost sounds like the drums or something's going halftime, when I was hearing it back. It's really slows down. I'd be curious to see if the BPM is also slowing down, but it seems like there's just a lot more space given to the solo becoming the center and everything else. There's not really a lot of big
It's magnificent. It's magnificent. It has center stage. According to Joey, they played it together. You didn't know this when you heard the record. It did sound Georgish, but more melodic to me, without knocking George, and just a beautiful melodicism to it that I had never heard. And that's getting introduced to Pete Ham. But Yeah, that middle is a centerpiece and a showpiece, and it's a lesson in slide guitar playing that doesn't involve a lot of intricate notes, but is just so stunning. Stunning.
And the backing vocals, let's talk about that for a second, because that's pretty iconic too. Who is that? That's not just Tom Evans. I can't even hear who it is in the band. Usually, I mean, they have very iconic voices. I couldn't tell.
I think it's supposed to be just Badfinger. It's never,
Tom and Joe?
Never could be recreated
Yeah.
live, including in the middle, previous to that solo, when there's a beautiful harmony as Pete and Tom harmonize going up to prepare for the solo. Of course, that was not done live. It was more work than they needed live. It was, according to what I understand, a difficult song for them to play live, although I saw it.
I love that. Again, I think Pete Ham is extremely structured, and then when he just goes slightly off that structure, it's like my favorite moment in any song of his. So in this, it's very much sincere. You know, he remembers this. It's a love story. It's like all of this. And then that solo happens, and it sounds like almost like a fight in a relationship. He almost gets a little bit angry, right?
Yeah,
he changes the melody, the day after day.
That's right.
Like,
That's
he goes,
right.
he becomes a little bit more bluesy. And then when he does the "I Give My Love to You," he it's staccato. He doesn't hold the note. It's almost like this fight. And then by the end of the song, it's that sincere, long holding the note to you for like 10 seconds, running out of breath.
Also, it's such a good point you're making. I never really thought of it. Also, after that, then with the Mike Gibbons fill getting ready for that last verse, and the last verse, the whole thing picks up. The drumming is different than the whole rest of the song. And now they're a little tight little rock band doing this ballad. Yeah. And it's still a ballad, but everything is picked up, and you've got the boom, and the drumming it's a magnificent display of some chops that they had, and what is not really, they pulled it off. I think of all the songs we've reviewed, I was more speechless at this song.
Okay, so let's cover B-side of the U.S. version is Money. That's the Tom Evans. You know, they wouldn't really put the same person on both sides of the record, so what do we think of that?
Not often talked about today because, of course, Pete Ham's genius is recognized in the general. However, when you love them, it wasn't just Pete. So you had this other vibe in the band. You had the Joey kind of like the funny kind of irreverent kind of guy, and Tommy too, a little unpredictable and a little almost acidically, trippingly, never knowing. Tom Evans was a cat unto himself and a character unto himself. This song "Money" was a big part of the mystique to me and the love of this straight up album. Because you had the big hits and you had the big, which we haven't talked about, big Pete Ham ballads and heavy songs. This has the Tommy Joey harmony in it, which we loved even in the old days. This is Tommy Joey access with Pete coming in also, which is clearly audible when he comes in on the chorus with Money the second time. Beautiful harmony. The drumming on Money is great to fill the verse lines. And the great thing about Money, just to close out for me, and I'll turn it over to you, is the beautiful transition that's done with a cello at the end, which on the album goes into the song Flying, which is next. The one we knew, when listening to it the first time, was this beautiful cello. And of course with Beatles-esque feelings and overtones and something, but it was, again, an original Badfinger thing. And that transition, and Money and Flying were kind of sister songs. Money being a Tom song and Flying being primarily a Joey song. I think Tom got credit. It's just an unbelievable song. I love it. Also, it was a part of the mystique of that album. It wasn't just one guy. This song had a lot to do with balancing out the whole album. Tremendous song. I love it.
It's very laid back again, and it's the whole song is just built around that sustain, which is like such a basic thing in guitar playing, but it works. It's easy to listen to. It's nice. It sounds different than other things.
Yeah, it is built around.
And I was thinking about the other version too, with like almost the cartoon vocals. I think on one of the harmonies they go all the way up. Money, money. And I think this just sounds much more mature as a sound. Just a more natural sounding song to do it
that
this way.
Jeff Emmerich produced Money.
Yeah, and I like the fade out at the end. I guess into the cello part's not really a fade out, but how it gets much more length to all the notes, or like they, the riff becomes they hold it down longer, the bass becomes longer, everything it kind of propels it into this other place. So I think it's a cool way to end the song too. So good B-side. Quickly touch on In the Rest of the World, Sweet Tuesday Morning was the B-side. So that's a Joey song. Again, they're kind of choosing another more laid back song from the album. And I guess we should touch on my story, because I was born on a Tuesday and you were listening to this song, I think. So there's personal element that might bias our ranking a little bit towards that.
Yes, it was playing on the way in.
It's a great song. It's a great ballad. It's just very well produced and you know, like kind of vulnerable. I think it's a single tracked vocal line from Joey, so it sounds almost live. It's really nice.
Well, you're touching on something, if I could just pick it up from there. Of course, it's a stunning song. It's a beautiful song. And side note is I don't even think he's given the credit, having lived through seeing these guys, the credit for the role that he played in songwriting as well at a time when he was basically with a guy for the ages writing with him, speaking of Pete Ham and Joey Mallon wrote many beautiful, stunning songs of his own, beautiful songs. And Sweet Tuesday Morning would be right at the top. The accordion at the end is so beautiful. I believe it's an accordion. And it used to give us feelings of some kind of ending of a Beatles song or Beatles. And we thought of those things then. It really makes no difference. Now it sounds funny because they stand on their own. Badfinger stands on their own. But the song has aged not at all. Of course, the thing that I would like to just say about Sweet Tuesday Morning, which Pete did on a lot of Joey songs, and I guess Joey probably returned the favor to Pete, but his interlaced guitar line in Sweet Tuesday Morning, which is played by Pete Ham, is really beautiful and really, I didn't realize at the time how the song's put together exactly. And after all these years, I mean, he is tying it together in such a beautiful way that it's really lifts it up. It really lifts it up. And it's made the group great. Sweet Tuesday Morning, tremendous B-side too.
Rate it overall and pick, you know, the version that we like better and use that for the rating. I'd probably pick Sweet Tuesday Morning. I think it offers more of a different view from Day After Day. Naturally, I feel like it works better as a single. 8 out of 10. I think Day After Day is a stunning single. I think it's again, you know, really kind of top form for the band and the playing and all of this. Putting it below No Matter What because
Interesting.
I think it's. Maybe it sounds slightly more dated, the 70s thing and the slide guitar, and I know that's kind of the iconic sound.
Interesting.
But something about it doesn't strike me, and maybe it's a 9 out of 10. That'd be the easier thing to say with all of their great singles. But something about it doesn't feel quite as much of a pop single in the same way.
Well, that's interesting. I guess maybe I see your points exactly about the sound of it and from where you stand, which is maybe I'm biased because of living through it, and I'd have to go with Day After Day with at least a 9.
I think that makes sense the way you talk about it.
I'd have to say
you can give it a 10 if you want.
I'm saving that for what's coming soon. Well, the sound, I don't really see the aging. I see your point with the sound of the guitar, but also there's a fluid gracefulness to that slide, which in a way doesn't age for me, but you know, we're listening with different ears. But
all right, pretty strong praise from both of us.
Yeah.
Amazing single.
Yeah, no.